Hi, this is Mike making my video to add to my collection. Today is 5/12/2025 and it's 1:15 p.m. So anyhow, I'm just making this video talking about various things about manifestation and how to, if it's a person you want to meet, it could be that, or it could be a possession you want to have, or it could be a place you want to go, an experience you want to have, things like that. Um, so anyway, I got these night vision goggle or binoculars, and they're Russian, and I looked at a pair of these when I was a kid, and I kept having it in my head, where I really wanted one, a pair of them, and I kept looking around, and then I seen the cheap plastic ones that China has and whatnot, and I wasn't intrigued with those, and I like these the best. These have the actual tubes in them. Uh, for whatever reason, just for nostalgia or whatever, I like these classic ones. They're vintage. So anyway, I just been collecting night vision stuff for whatever reason, and I had different scopes in the past, and that's what they were, scopes. And I eventually found these, and they were $50. So I went through hell and high water to get them. And I remember, the whole process of manifestation is just visualizing. And you visualize, and then you find it, and then you take the steps to get it, and and then you go through whatever hoops you have to jump through to go pick it up or whatever. And then once you do that, then you have it, and then that kind of collapses the wave function, and then you no longer have that desire. So then that's really an example. And I used to have a list that was a mile long of things that I wanted to have, and it could be any number of things, but things that I pretty much wanted, and then I went through and took the steps to get them. And it could amount to cars, trucks, boats, motorcycles, four-wheelers, and all kinds of things, computers, different types of watches. I had a Rolex. I got a knockoff Rolex now, but different things like that. I had a Tag Heuer, and just various things. I collect things that are unique and valuable. And so, anyhow, I kind of run a pawn shop from my room. I used to have a car lot, and then, I kind of got away from that, because a lot of the cars that I would get, would have inherent flaws, like blown head gaskets. And sometimes I could fix it with sealer, but other than that, I pretty much dumped them. Walked away from the whole car thing, and it cost money to store them. And not to mention, sometimes the repairs are too astronomically high. I think they want $180 an hour now at a dealership to fix a car. And it was just getting to be too much, and I walked away from it. So anyway, I got out of the car lot business, and then now I'm still kind of working on the pawn shop business. So anyhow, that's enough of that. But I just kind of, I kind of collect things that are valuable, and they have intrinsic value, and for whatever reason, to me they're still worth money, and it's not junk. So anyhow, but anyway, that's what it is. It's a bunch of successions, to have those needs met. And then, once those needs are met, once those things are completed, then you kind of sit in a place, where you kind of feel bored and empty. And that's really ultimately what happens, the Holy Spirit that's in you, runs out of ideas and runs out of things that you could desire. And it's because you've already had everything, and you've done everything, and you became everything. So, with that being said, you just kind of you enjoy the things you do have. It's crazy, I could spend $50 on something, and it could totally fulfill so many needs that I have. It's unreal. And there's things that could be fulfilled that are priceless, and that they didn't cost anything, but they're beyond understanding how phenomenal they are. So there's that, and it's just basically, it could be a hot shower or something to eat, and then basically a little sleep and having a clean room, and maybe a few little hobbies and whatnot, and then things to do, and decent weather outside, it makes you feel better. So so it's like I find comfort, in inexpensive things, and things that are fixer uppers, and that could be women too, and I like the idea of helping them along. But I don't have the money for a relationship now, so I don't mess with women. And of course, with that being said, I don't have too many more needs anymore. I'm kind of getting to the point where I'm at the end of it. So, so anyway, you could have a lot of trauma, and a lot of that trauma, childhood trauma, and even your teenage trauma, and your young adulthood trauma, those types of things, and even your adulthood trauma, those types of things are deeply seated inside of you, and they come to the surface, and you deal with them. And a lot of times, it might be, you miss your mom or whatever, and she comes back from the dead, which happened to me. I seen her, and that helped me. And of course, I had a lot of questions about the other side, and I pretty much got that figured out. That the other side is basically, it is congruent with this world, and it runs with this world. And it's just like, we don't necessarily see that aspect, but it's there. And, so, when the wave function gets collapsed, you witness things that are amazing. And all the, the parables and stuff like that start to make sense. But, what's really necessary is you have to crack the code, and you have to understand what those things are about in order to manifest and to basically see those things. So, it's like people think they can just snap their fingers and demand a miracle or a manifestation or whatever, and it's not like that. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. There's a lot of effort, a lot of toiling, and a lot of toiling, and then basically, you find that hidden treasure. And there's that, and then you have to pretty much understand physics in all its forms, and then of course, philosophy in all its forms, and of course psychology in all its forms. So you really get to that point, but AI pretty much has the answer for a lot of that. You no longer have to really go through hell in a handbasket or whatever to understand algebra and whatnot, which is a shame. A lot of people don't. But you have to challenge your mind. But with AI, you don't have to do any of that. And then with robotics, there's no need for a lot of the labor force. They have the Rouge complex, and that's over in Detroit, Michigan. And it was a Ford Motor Company complex. I believe they had 7 assembly lines for different vehicles, and they actually completed that where now they only have 700 employees, but they had 50,000. So that just gives you an example of how society is now. They're learning how to stop, get where people don't have to work as hard, and they don't dedicate their whole life to, supporting a family, let's say, or whatever. So, I'm lucky, I'm fortunate, I don't have to work, and I'm disabled, but it's like, I don't have to work, and I basically don't have the stress that I used to, and my needs are pretty much met for the most part, and that's really all there is to it. There really isn't too many problems. So anyway, you got to toil. You got to really work at something. You got to visualize it in your mind. You got to see it, visualize it in your mind, and you got to believe that you can have it. And you got to believe that you can achieve it. And then you have to take the steps and measures to receive it. And it's giving and taking. You have to put forth the effort, and then you receive it. It might be something that a lot of people don't necessarily recognize or they don't notice, but you just go out and get it, and you go out and get it, and you obtain it, and then it makes your life feel better because you got it. Material items do make me feel better. I'm happy about that, but sometimes the spiritual side of things, that gets drowned out by your ego and your money and stuff like that. But you can't damn the flesh that's dependent on the spirit, and damn the spirit that's dependent on the flesh. Either way around, if you go too far, I'm in a physical world, I'm a physical man, so I like mental things. I like physical things, but I do understand spiritual things are very important too, and I've experienced a lot of them. So ultimately, that's what it's all about: is you make the two into one, right and left hemisphere into one mind, and then one love. So like I said, there's really not too much else for me to do. I don't have too many more goals to achieve, and that's actually a nice feeling to have. It's just you kind of get to the point where you're at the top of the mountain, and you really don't have to overextend yourself, and you live within your means. And don't get me wrong, it's okay to have extra things, but and it's okay to have different insights on things and all that, but the tried and true method is really the true way to go. And it's okay to have friends here and there, but you don't need to water yourself down, and you really don't want people sucking off you. You really want to have your own well that you have for yourself, and you really don't want to have everybody in the world draining you. Psychic vampires and people that are always needy. So, that's really ultimately what it is. So you just kind of keep your circle of friends, nuclear circle, family, friends, and stuff like that. But there comes a point in time when you have to let go of all that to find yourself and go on a vision quest. And, have comfort with inexpensive things. Things that are cheap and easy, and, it don't cost a fortune. Don't go spend money on all these extracurricular things. And, you buy generic stuff and whatever. But some things you spend good money on, like shoes, for example. But even those you can find use. So, anyhow, that's really what it amounts to. And you eat decent food, and you take care of yourself, clean yourself up, clean your room up, organize things, and have a simple, basic life. It doesn't have to be that basic, but just kind of keep it simple. So anyway, that's all I got to say.